Good morning. How are you, my friends? I'm so pleased to see you all this morning. I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dr. Evan Shelton. Dr. Shelton is here from the Center for Applied Research in Dementia, CARD. And at CARD, he's responsible for the development and implementation of care practices, and those care practices are going to help us build a Montessori-inspired lifestyle in the Rowan House. And so that's what Dr. Shelton is here to chat with us about today. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome.
Wow, thank you all so much. I just got in from Cleveland about 30 minutes ago, and I wasn't sure what to expect. And wow, what a community, and it's so nice to see you all. My name is Evan, and today I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about what we do at the Center for Applied Research in Dementia. Y'all are aware of the Rowan House that's being built. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm excited to today. Friendship Village was very kind. They approached us and asked us to help train some of the staff that are going to be working at Rowan House on what we do, which is a Montessori-inspired lifestyle for persons with dementia. How many of you have heard of Montessori before? Oh my gosh. Okay, so for those of you, most of you who have heard of it, where did you hear about it? Or what do you think about when you think of Montessori? Children, kids, grandkids, part of Montessori school, right? So that originated from Dr. Maria Montessori, who was an Italian physician before the turn of the century, 1890s-ish. She started this Montessori approach to early childhood education. Our director, Dr. Cameron Camp, he, many years later, was working on his dissertation in cognitive psychology, working with individuals living with dementia, and he was interested in how persons with dementia learn, how they can remember new information despite having cognitive limitations. At the same time, he had two kids, one with developmental disability, going through a Montessori school. And he was thrilled at the development he was seeing in his own kids, started volunteering at the school, and began to draw parallels between the things that they were doing in the school, respect, dignity, and equality for the children, finding purposeful activities, prepared environment, ways to engage kids, and what could be in senior living, especially for persons living with dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and related forms of memory impairment. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this approach that we use, and over the next, we'll start with staff here shortly before Rowan House opens, and we'll keep working with staff for about a year and a half to help build up the Rowan House and implement the Montessori principles in the community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the overview of Montessori and how it applies to memory care. I think it's easiest to understand how Montessori fits in memory care if you see it first. So I have a video, and this is from a community that we worked with in France. So anyone speak French? Hey, all right, you'll know what they're talking about. You can fill me in later. So pay attention to the kind of the things that are happening, not necessarily the words, right? And then we'll kind of talk about some of the themes and some of the things that you see after the video's over. That last woman, they asked her, "What's on your bucket list? What have you not done that you would like to do?" And she said she wanted to ride a motorcycle. So the staff at this community called around and they found a local motorcycle club that apparently wears kilts. I guess that's a French thing. And they came and they got her on this special motorcycle. They rode around the community. She said, "I want to go on the highway." So they went on the highway, and so what did you all notice about this video? Some of the themes, the things that you saw? I know there was a lot, and it was not in English. Residents were doing a lot of everyday practical things, folding laundry, putting away dishes, yeah. Things that you would do in your home, right? What else? Yeah, they had community. How important is that? That's so important. I think a lot of times when children of somebody with memory impairment are looking for the right community for their parent, they look for some place that's safe, that's secure, that they'll get their meds on time, those basic things, but don't think as much about the community, and do they have roles that they can play? Do they have a purpose? Are they engaged? And these types of kind of higher level needs that we all have, right? Is there anything else you saw in the video that stood out to you? Right. Maria Montessori said they will learn through their hands. And of course, she was talking about children. But, we've got all these different systems of memory, and some of them are more lasting than other systems. And the things that we learn to do through our hands, those motor memories, if you've ever heard, it's like riding a bike, right? It's automatic. And a lot of those skills that we learn throughout our lives are remaining strengths that we can tap into, even pretty far into the course of dementia. So things like folding for those people who know how to knit, or play an instrument. Those are skills that don't just go away with dementia. And not to mention there's a therapeutic element to keeping engaged with your hands, right? You're using it, which can help you maintain that independence for longer. All of the individuals in the community had some kind of role that they played there. So you may have noticed the gentleman who passed out the newspapers. That's his role. Every day he wakes up, he knows when the newspaper arrives, he gets it, he passes it out. And that's kind of part of his identity there at that community. People know him as, somebody who does that role. They look forward to seeing him and talking to him, and he gets a lot of fulfillment out of playing that part in the community. One woman, you may have saw it then, they were playing the word game on the board. The woman who was leading that is also a resident. So we have residents leading activities for other residents, which is kind of a wild and crazy idea. Things that residents love to do, they can lead a group. So this is kind of what Montessori is about, and it's about giving control and freedom and choice back to residents and supporting them and helping them use their remaining strengths to be able to stay independent and accomplish things. It's really interesting when residents in communities that we work with start to kind of get that taste of freedom, that they can choose things for themselves and they can decide what they want to do. They go in really fun directions with it. They do all sorts of cool things, and it's up to us to kind of see where they'll lead us.
I didn't see conversation. Did they do that, or is that kind of?
Oh, yeah. So conversation, yes. So the activities that for Montessori are intended to be engaging. So engagement is the number one priority. And whether that's engaging in a conversation or engaging in some kind of a task. So for example, I think the video's in this presentation. I have a video of residents preparing vegetables for a soup. They're all sitting around in total silence, and they're focused on peeling these vegetables and snapping the beans. In other activities, there'll be a group reading and discussion activity where everyone's talking and they're sharing ideas and having communication. So yes, it just depends on the activity, if that makes sense.
Or could it be the level of their loss?
Both. And we'll talk with the staff at Rowan House about how to enable people to communicate who can't necessarily verbalize as well as other people. So there are lots and lots of ways to do that. Changing the type of the question, yes, no, either or, using sorting. So even if you can't verbalize yes, no, maybe you can sort a card into yes and no categories, or like and dislike. So there are a lot of ways to enable people to communicate, even if the verbal skill's not there. The woman at the end of this video who rode the motorcycle, after that experience, they said, "Is there anything else you would like to do?" Risky question, right? And she said, "I want to go hang gliding." And there she is, going hang gliding. So these are the more kind of outrageous and exciting things that could happen with residents. But again, when residents have that choice and the independence and the autonomy, this would never happen if this particular woman didn't feel like she had the ability to express those desires and feel like they would actually be respected and that it might actually happen, right? So really exciting things, exciting places that the residents will take this community in Rowan's House and guide the staff. So I've already talked a lot about this stuff just in discussing the video, but the essentials of a Montessori community. Montessori emphasized dignity, equality, and respect for children. So sometimes when we talk with organizations about the Montessori approach, they say, well, isn't it treating older adults like children if we're using this approach from early childhood education? And our response is, Montessori didn't treat children like children, right? She treated children like equals. And so that's what we're trying to do here, to provide that dignity, equality, and respect. And when we can do that, it's not the control is evenly divided, right? It's not like a power dynamic kind of a relationship. When we start training staff and communities, and we talk about dignity and equality and respect, sometimes staff will say, hey, wait a minute. We could use dignity, equality, and respect too. And they're absolutely right. Sometimes staff are the forgotten persons in person-centered care. So we work with staff not only on treating residents with dignity, equality, and respect, but on treating each other with dignity, equality, and respect, to feel emotionally safe where they work, to feel like they can trust their coworkers and their coworkers can trust them, to improve that communication and to work with leadership to, again, offer staff these same values. Yeah?
What kind of equality?
So equality as... Right, so yeah.
Dr. Shelton, will you do us a kindness and repeat the question through the microphone, please?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. That's all right.
The question is, what kind of equality? So when we talk about equality, in long-term care in general, we tend to think of the people who live in memory care as the receivers of care, and the ones who give the care, the staff, as the ones in power to have, the caregiver, care receiver type of relationship. For staff, the power dynamic is more between leadership and lower level employees, I guess you would say, direct care staff. And so to work with leadership to recognize the values and the opinions of staff that are on the floor that know the residents starts to kind of build that equality. Does that make sense? Okay.
Friends, also, my apologies for interrupting. We'll just ask you if you don't mind to hold your questions until the end so that Dr. Shelton can get through his full presentation. Alrighty, friends? Thank you so much.
In addition to this idea of dignity, equality, and respect for residents and staff, we work on independence and self-directed activities. So you saw in the video lots of examples of residents doing things independently. Montessori had a quote that I might be paraphrasing, but it's everything you do for me, you take away from me. Again, she said that in relation to children, but the principles apply in dementia as well. We want to encourage residents to do as much for themselves for as long as possible. And for some staff, that's a shift in thinking. Many staff, well-intentioned staff, want to do everything for the person with dementia, want to, they have a hospitality model. They want to take care of them, take care of everything they need, and that's noble, right? But we want to work with them to think about what's the minimum amount of assistance that you need to give this person for them to be able to succeed at it. Because when we can do that, when we give the minimum amount necessary, that person can maintain function for longer. Think about somebody who may struggle to feed themselves. If all they need is a lift of the hand, right, to be able to get the utensil up to their mouth, that's very different than them being fed, right? And it's a lot more work for staff as well. And think about the dignity aspect of something like that. If you can no longer feed yourself and somebody else has to do it for you, versus if you just need a little bit of assistance. A lot more dignified to be able to do it yourself to the extent that you can. Community roles. So you saw some examples of residents in community roles. I'll give you another example. A community that we work with in California, they asked us about a resident who was not coming out of her room. So she was staying in her room. She wasn't coming out for activities, didn't want to come out for meal times, and was generally in a bad mood, depressed. And they said, what can we do? So we work on what we call a responsive behavior inquiry, is how we phrase it for the staff that we train. But essentially, it's a process of discovering who is this person? What are their passions? What's their background like? What are their remaining strengths? What makes them happy? And with all of that knowledge, what possible roles can they have here in this community? And this woman had been in a pretty high-level customer-facing role, really loved people, but wasn't finding the type of engagement there that she was used to. They asked her if she wanted to help answer phones at the switchboard, and she loved it. She, every morning, woke up, she got on her work clothes, right? So she's actually getting out of bed with purpose, setting an alarm, no less, getting out of bed, and going to the switchboard every morning. She would answer the phone and say, Roundtree Gardens, please hold, and then hand the phone over to a staff to actually use the switchboard and send them where they need to go. But it totally changed her life in that community because she had a role. She had a reason to get out of bed, a thing to do to give back. And again, it became part of her identity there. So these are the things we look for all the residents. And they can be small things. For folks that are particularly religious, saying a prayer before meal times, choosing music for an event. They're small things that are big things, as we say. They help really build a person's identity where they live. And then an environment that promotes engagement. So Montessori coined the term prepared environment. And by that, she meant an environment that is set up in a way that people can engage with the things in it. And in schools, that might mean signs and different manipulatives that kids can use or build with or experiment with. In long-term care, there are lots of things we can do with the environment to make it more interactive and engaging for somebody with cognitive impairment. I want to, actually, I'll go through some of those things here shortly. I've got some photos I'll show you. But one of the big factors that we discuss with staff is that it is possible to live well with dementia. We focus on thinking differently about memory loss, not as a disease, which is how it's most commonly viewed, especially in the US, as a disease that unfortunately has no cure, but we think about it instead as a disability, just like a physical disability, right? And when you think about dementia as a disability, suddenly you can think about ways to help overcome the disability, to get around the deficits, to find the remaining strengths and to build on those. So just like we would think about quality of life for somebody who has a physical disability, somebody who's in a wheelchair, you wouldn't say that their quality of life is necessarily worse because they have a physical disability, right? That would be outrageous. Same thing for cognitive disabilities. There's still the possibility of living a good life. And we reject therapeutic nihilism. So this is the idea that there's nothing we can do, they have dementia. We don't know why this behavior is occurring, it's because they have dementia. And that can never be the reason, right? So we reject that entirely. We think about what are the external factors that are contributing to whether it's behaviors or somebody's disengaged or not happy where they're living, et cetera, et cetera. So I mentioned remaining strengths. And there are 4 areas we really look to find remaining strengths. Sensory is probably the most obvious. So hearing, smell, touch, sight. And we may experience some decline in these, we all do. But generally speaking, these are long-lasting things. The ability to smell, the ability to hear, see, maybe with the help of hearing aids or glasses, but nonetheless. There's a community that we work with. Every morning, a group of residents gets together and they mix together the ingredients for a batch of bread. And they put it in the bread maker and they start it, and throughout the day, the community starts to smell like fresh bread, right? Which is a much more appealing smell than like bleach spray or something like that, isn't it? We talk about personal care products. Think about the products that you've used, most of your life, your shampoo, your soap, your toothpaste, that stuff. It has a certain taste or a certain smell, a feeling that's familiar. That's important. We can use that, right? We can use that sense of familiarity and give persons with dementia the things that they're used to using. Motor skills, we talked about those motor memories, but imitating action, so imitation is a remaining strength. What if somebody can't brush their teeth if you ask them to brush their teeth? Instead of doing it for them, you can mime the actions, you can mime the motions of putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush, of lifting it up to your teeth, of scrubbing, and they can mime that. Suddenly we've enabled them to be independent, right? And that's a very important thing. Using tools is another one to hold things. Social skills, can they give an opinion, greet people, carry on a conversation? If so, can they respond to a question appropriately? We can give them choices in their day-to-day. Would you like the chicken or the fish for lunch? Do you want to wear this or this? If they can give an opinion, maybe they can be part of a social group, right? And then cognitive skills. Using templates is a great one. So you may have seen in the video, they were setting the tables with placemats that had outlines of the utensils. So to be able to put a fork on the outline of a fork is very easy. But if you were to ask somebody with dementia, hey, would you please set the table for me? That might be too difficult of a task. So we can simplify with templates. And we use what we call cognitive ramps in the environment. So just like a person with a physical disability might need a physical ramp, for example, to get up these steps, a person with a cognitive disability might need what we call cognitive ramps to be successful in their environment, to make sense out of their environment, to navigate their environment, and so on. So I want to show you what some of these cognitive ramps look like. So a nice big sign, paper towel, pull here. That's so simple, right? And we use these cognitive ramps every day. I just drove down here from Cleveland. I used my GPS. That's a cognitive ramp for me, right? The signs on the streets, speed limit signs, cognitive ramps. Otherwise, I wouldn't know where I was going or how to get here, and we wouldn't be having this talk, right? In restaurants, the menu and what's on each dish is a cognitive ramp. The sign that says seat yourself or please wait for a host. The signs on the bathroom doors. It helps us make sense out of the place that we're in. And for somebody with dementia, we may need more of those ramps, more clear and obvious ramps than we might need if we don't have dementia. This one over here, please juice some oranges. So that's an invitation to participate in an individual activity. Using that orange juicer is using motor skills. It's a bit of a rehab kind of a movement. And you also get fresh orange juice. Here's an example of the placemats with the outlines. So you can ask residents, would you please put the plates down on the placemats instead of, can you set the table? Simplify. So over time, there have been different models of care for persons with dementia. And originally, the hospital model of care was prevailing model, where the environment is sterile, it's cold, people's basic needs are met, food, water, medicine, bathroom, the right temperature, really basic level stuff, right? Physiological needs. But how many of you have spent the night in a hospital? How many of you are excited to do it again? Right, it's not some place where we want to live, right? Nobody wants to live in a hospital. It doesn't foster personhood. It's cold. It's not a good place to live, right? The hotel model of care has become more popular recently. And this is really, instead of a focus on purely on care, it's a focus on hospitality. So it's kind of grown out of the hotel industry where, the advertising is, everything's done for you, come and relax, that sort of stuff, which is fine, but it typically has programming that's done by staff and offered to residents. Residents don't really have a voice in the way the organization is run or the programming is run. And it typically lacks a sense of community. So hotels, think about the last time you stayed in a hotel, right? Would you want to live there? Probably not. So you're probably thinking, well, it's better than a hospital, right? But think about how you feel when you're on vacation after a week or 2 weeks of being on vacation in the hotel room. You start to think, this has been great, it's been fun, but I'm ready to go home, right? And so that's what we try to accomplish with the Montessori-inspired lifestyle, a model of care that's more home-like, with Montessori's respect, dignity, and equality, where residents have roles. They decide on their entertainment, they decide on their programming. And one of the big things that residents do in a Montessori community is they lead committees. So these are groups of residents that make decisions together about really any number of things. I'll give you some examples of resident-led committees. So this photo here is a meal planning committee. This group gets together and they work with culinary to talk about what foods they would like to have, and sometimes they even help prepare the foods. There are so many different committees in the communities we work with. Some of the really cool ones are, I think I have a picture of it here. Hold on. A Friendly Neighbors Club. So these folks, they think about how would we welcome somebody new who moves into the community? What should we do for them? And this particular group brings them a basket, saves them a seat in the dining room. Some communities will sing a song for new people. When somebody gets sick or they have to go to the hospital, the Friendly Neighbors Club will bring them a care basket. And they decide all themselves what they want to do and how they want to do it. One community up in Cleveland formed a social justice committee, and the residents decided that they wanted to run a collection drive for a local women's shelter. And so together with the activities staff, they figured out what they could collect. Part of their activities, they created this donation bin, they made the signs, they put it in the lobby, they got all of their collections, and they took an outing together with the staff to the women's shelter to drop off all the things they collected. So talk about purposeful activity, right? And they decided to do these things themselves. It's not something that the staff asked them to be a part of. I'll show you here. This is a soup committee. So this says, preparing the vegetables for the soup of the day. So I think I mentioned this video earlier where they're sitting in total silence and they're just focused on the thing that they're doing. So what did you notice in this video? Anything stand out to you?
They're able to do things they used to do years ago.
Right, it just looks normal, doesn't it? It looks normal. They're sitting around the table preparing the dinner. Sure, yeah. Very perceptive, yes. So this woman has had a stroke. She no longer has movement in the right side of her body, but she can still be part of this group because they've created this cutting board that's got prongs coming up from underneath, and she can stick the carrot down and then peel it. Now, she had her stroke after she had developed dementia, so she's already got memory loss when she has her stroke, yet she still learned how to use this device, right? It's an old myth that people with dementia can't learn new things. And for those of us who have worked in memory care, we know that people with dementia learn all the time, whether it's where they sit at dinner and breakfast, or which staff they like or which staff they don't like, learning all the time. And so we can use that not only to enable people to do things like this, right, to overcome their deficits, but also to learn maybe how to recover from a surgery, to stand up in a certain way, or to transfer in a certain way, or how to navigate the environment, where their room is located, or how to get to the dining room. Learning is a really great way to improve quality of life in dementia. The woman who is snapping the beans there, she has pretty advanced dementia, but again, her hands know what to do, right? Her hands know what to do. When I show this video to CEOs and leadership in different communities, I almost always get somebody saying, they're using knives, right? These people with dementia are using knives. How can that be safe? Well, you saw the one woman who was using the knife, this way, right? That's, again, something that she's learned how to do. She's known that her entire life. Now, me, if I tried to cut up a carrot like that, there would be blood, right? That's not safe for me to do because I don't have those skills. But despite the dementia, it's much more safe for her to do it. So we have to think not only about the dementia, but the capacities, the remaining strengths that these people have. Okay, so I think I'm almost out of time here. Let's see. Here's a video of a different kind of a group activity. So this is a reading group, and this gentleman in the blue, he volunteered for leading these group activities after he was diagnosed with early stage dementia. And these were something that were created by our director when he was at an organization called Myers Research. And it's essentially a group reading activity. But watch the way that the reading activity leads to communication and community building. He said it helps me too. So in that group were people of different ability levels. Some who had very early stage dementia who are able to read quite fluently. Others who, were more advanced and not able to read, but you see they're helping each other. They're discussing the things that are read, and they're building relationships. And so that's what community is about. This long-term care community, right? Let's see. So here are some of the outcomes we've seen from this approach. So this is a study that used Montessori, these Montessori techniques in 7 assisted living communities and 9 skilled nursing communities. And right off the bat, a big reduction in drugs. So antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, and antipsychotics all fell significantly, which is wonderful, because when we're creating a community where people feel engaged and they've got purpose, we tend to kind of sidestep the need for those things. Hypnotics. So these are drugs that are often used for behaviors in dementia when the staff don't know what else to do. And we reduced those in this study by 98% in assisted living and 94% in skilled nursing. Over half of the communities got rid of them altogether, which is really wonderful. Wandering and agitation were reduced, both by over 80%. Residents gained weight. That's a good thing, believe me. They're eating more, they're gaining weight, they're staying healthier. Residents improved their sleep. We saw improvement in ADLs, which is activities of daily living, things like bathing, dressing, those types of basic life tasks. And in the community, we even saw some improvements in census, so more people moved in, and employees stayed around longer. Not as profound effects there, but still some significant results. So really exciting outcomes from this approach, and we're really excited to work at Rowan House to implement this technique. I also have a 2-year-old boy named Rowan, so this is like, Rowan House already has a special place in my heart. So, do you all have questions for me? Yes. Great question. The question is, how does family or does family get involved with this? And the answer is they do. And one of the things that we'll work with staff on is creating what we call a visitor center. If you've ever observed a visit from a family member in memory care, it can be good and it can be bad. Sometimes family visits are uncomfortable. Families don't really know what to talk about or how to talk to somebody with memory impairment. And so we work on creating engaging activities that family members can do with the resident. So there will be, at some point in Rowan House, a visitor center where when family members walk in, they can find activities or engaging things that they can do with their family member. We also really encourage community events and inviting families to things that are happening on campus, things that committees are planning. So if there's an outings committee or an events committee, inviting families to that. And yeah, the more involvement from families, the better. Yes?
I got some comments. My wife had dementia for 2.5 years, and I learned that you never disagree, you always agree, or you change the subject. You know, sometimes you just run out of patience. So you just gotta walk away, go to the bathroom or somewhere temporarily. There are good times. A couple instances, it's really kind of cute. Is I'd be brushing her teeth for her, and she'd be trying to help, and then I wanted to floss before I rinsed. I said to myself, and I said to her, I'm losing it. And she said, you know what, Jim? I always thought you were. Now I know for sure. And then this is another acute instance. I really loved her a lot. We married a long time. She's in a wheelchair, and I always sat beside her. So I started smooching her, not because I was trying to satisfy her or make her feel good. I was doing it for myself because I loved her. He says, Jim, that's enough already. That's all I got to say. It was a wonderful life, 2.5 years. She wasn't in any home. She was in assisted living, and I took care of her with some aides, and it worked out fine.
Yeah,
Wouldn't have had it any other way.
that's great, and it's good that you found those the moments of joy with in your time with her. What you said reminded me of a quote, and it's from Maya Angelou, and again, I'm going to get it wrong, but it goes something like, I probably won't remember what you say to me. I won't remember what you do, but I'll always remember how you make me feel. And that's something we talk with staff about in your interactions. They may forget what you said, 10 minutes from now, but they'll remember if it was a good interaction or a bad one, right? So again, that learning. Yeah, thanks for your comment. Any other questions? Yes?
I was concerned, although I was pleased to see everybody.
I was pleased to see everyone working in the vegetables and preparing food, but I'm a little concerned now in COVID times about the cleanliness and no hands and touching their faces. And is there something done by the staff to help with that?
Yeah, so food is a difficult, every community kind of does it differently because of the very things you're talking about. Like the video in France where they're using knives, they can't do that in the United States just because of the regulatory environment. Memory care generally can't give residents knives to help chop vegetables. That's just kind of the way it is here. But also, yeah, considerations about food safety, infection control are always top priority. So we work on applying these concepts within the existing standards that they have here in terms of health and safety. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Sometimes we have to be a little creative about how we approach things in order to, maintain like the cleanliness, and especially in times of like pandemic, that probably wouldn't have been okay, right? Yeah. But usually there are ways to get residents engaged and keep the, health and safety.
My mom had advanced Alzheimer's, and yet she would walk past a piano and her fingers would play tunes, even though she wasn't even looking at it, but that was still there.
Yeah, it's amazing. Musicians have that motor memory that lasts a long time. Yeah, it's great. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Great question. So the question is, doesn't it take more staff to do this than a typical memory care community? And the answer is, up front, it takes some more effort to get the community quality up. But once these techniques are in place, staff are actually spending less time doing things like redirecting responsive behavior. So for example, if residents are calling out or agitated or asking repetitive questions, those behaviors require staff time to intervene and redirect. And when we create a system that provides purpose for the residents, we tend to see those behaviors reduce pretty dramatically. And so staff don't spend as much time on those things. And there are a lot of different sort of examples of that, about reduced staff time because residents are, they're doing their own committees instead of, an activity staff leading, every single thing, or, they're engaged in individual activities and they don't have to be occupied by, somebody, therapist or whatever. So the answer is there is some additional training up front, but we think it pays off in the long run. And staff tend to be a lot more satisfied at the end of the day with their job when they're part of a community like this than when they're part of a community where they don't feel like the resident care is as good as it could be.
I think there's a great presentation, and I'm looking forward to it. I have a brother-in-law here in memory care, and I'm excited. I'm so glad that Friendship Village is engaging you with us.
Good. Thank you so much for your comment. And one of the things we'll talk with the staff about is breaking down kind of the silos between independent living and assisted living and memory care. So opportunities for you all to be involved with the programming that they're doing at memory care, and maybe for them to be involved with some of the things you're doing, really kind of helps, again, just build the community, not only within memory care, but across the whole campus. So I love to hear that you're open to that idea. Yeah. Did you have a question? Yes.
Do you run into difficulty with, say, the state health departments on preparing food?
So food prep is something that every community is going to do differently. Sometimes, so we work with some places that use a small house model, which has its pros and cons, but they do their cooking there on the unit. We work with other places like this that have a culinary department that prepares all the food. Some places, the food committee will be, they'll decide on the types of food that they want to have, but they won't actually be preparing it. So I was part of an example committee a few months ago where they said, we want all beef hot dogs. Why do we keep getting these turkey dogs? It only costs a little more for all beef, right? Or, it's the middle of summer, I don't want canned vegetables. There's a farmer's stand right down the street with all these fresh veggies. And those things can translate in different ways. Maybe it's an outing, right, to go pick some vegetables and bring them to culinary so they can prepare them. There are lots of different ways food is a very important part of life. There are lots of different ways to have involvement in what food and how the food is made without necessarily being hands-on with the cooking. In our experience, we haven't had state have any issues with the communities we've worked with in terms of their food prep. A lot of the work we do is overseas, so they have different regulations. We work in Australia and France and Italy. So again, it's the kind of thing where you have to do your best within the constraints of the local regulations and that sort of thing. I hope that answers your question. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to add, just because food prep has come up twice, just for you guys to kind of reassure you, we can do the preparation, but we don't actually have to use that particular apple or that particular grape or that, we can do these activities with our residents without actually using in their food. They still get the experience and the engagement factor. So just wanted to
that's true
relieve
too.
everybody's worries.
Very good. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We're excited to have Dr. Shelton with us all day, and so he's going to spend the rest of his day today touring and spending quite a bit of time this afternoon with our team over in Alderwood and Waterford, getting to know some of our direct care providers and just getting to know us a little bit better so that when we get closer to the opening of Rowan House, he and his colleagues are prepared to come down here and help us all get trained up and ready to have the very best Rowan House that we can. So let's give him our thanks, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you all very much. It was really wonderful meeting you all.